Hello there, creators, dreamers, and audio architects. It's your favorite maestro of music, Maddie, back with another deep dive into the world of music. Today, we're uncovering some hidden treasures of Logic Pro X. We have 10 stealthy features that will give your music the spark it needs. So fasten your seatbelts and strap in. First up, let's talk about fading options. Whenever you have an audio region like this, there are a couple things you can do to make it fade. First, open up the inspector window, open up the region, and then click in Fade In. This is in milliseconds, and you can adjust it up or down depending on what you need. Same with Fade Out. You can even add multiple at the same time and adjust all of their fade-ins at once. This makes it really helpful for adjusting multiple tracks at the same time. Another cool trick to know is if you hold down the Shift and Control button on a Mac, go to the end of a track, click and drag, then you've got yourself a fade. If you do this over two regions like this, it will crossfade them. Then if you hold down Shift and Control again, you'll get this icon and you can adjust the slope of that fade. If you go up to the top here, you can adjust when it starts and when it stops. If you don't want it, you can adjust it all the way here to get rid of it. Bada bang, bada boom. Shaping your fades visually like this with Control and Shift makes it a lot easier to perfect and visually craft your sound. On to the next tip, low latency mode. If audio lag has been your nemesis during recording, then it's time to conquer it with this simple trick. With a simple click, Logic Pro reduces the processing load, making your sounds sound as smooth as cruising down a highway. Logic automatically calculates the lag given by some plugins and compensates for it by putting your audio directly where it should be. You can access this feature in a couple of ways. The first is to go up here to record, then choose low latency mode. The next way to look at low latency mode is to customize your control bar and display and turn it on there. You can find it under modes and functions. Once you click that, you'll get a little meter here that will show you when low latency mode is on or off. I recommend this over clicking on the record button because then you can always see if it's on or off. When you're mixing, it's important to turn low latency off because it will turn off some of the plugins that will change the sound of your tracks. But while you're recording, keep on low latency mode so that your tracks align perfectly to what you had when you recorded. Next up on the list is the Marquee tool. If you're not using the Marquee tool, you're probably not editing as fast as you can in Logic. The way I often use the Marquee tool is to put it in my second tool slot here so that I can access it anytime by holding the command button. I use the Marquee tool most for moving sections of songs and cutting more than one track at a time. Let's say I want to select this selection right here. In order to do that, I'm going to hold down Command with my Marquee tool selected. Now, if I click here, I have selected this part. One of the coolest things you can do with Marquee tool is involved with audio tracks. Say at this very last line, you just want this last little bit so that you can add a reverb on a different track so you don't have to automate it. What I would do, I would hold down Command, select this track, and then clicking at the top and holding down Alt, I can actually duplicate this audio file without ruining the first one at all. Learning how to use the Marquee tool properly will make your editing way faster, and it's really like magic without the wand. Next up, we have capture recording. If you're finding this information helpful, I create videos like this every week, and I'd love to have you join the community. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on the next one. Have you ever played a perfect riff or nailed a vocal part but then realized that you weren't recording? Capture recording is here to save the day. In fact, Logic Pro is actually always listening to your recordings whether you're recording them or not. Just like before with low latency mode, if you're going to use capture recording, I recommend adding it by customizing your control bar and display. Go into control bar and display, and then find under transport, you're gonna click on capture recording here. Capture recording is a red circle with that white button on top of it. Let's say that we have this track ready to go, we're ready to record, but then we just click play and we don't actually play any music. And after clicking the capture recording button, your recording will pop up as if you recorded it from the first time. Thank God. On to number 5, we have the drag and drop sampler. I use this all the time in Logic, and if you're not, you're probably missing out. If you're using any kind of audio sample library, you need to know this trick. In order to deal with these samples, we're going to open up a software instrument, and we're going to change it to Quick Sampler. Quick Sampler. Now once we have Quick Sampler selected, we're going to open it up and get this window. Now we can drag and drop our sample from Splice into here. If we land on Optimize it, it's just going to choose the best loop points for us so we don't have to worry about it. Logic automatically sets the in and out points so that we can just play it and play it as we would a normal mini synth. Super cool. I use this all the time. It's a lot like Lego, but for music. Up next, I want to talk about using track stacks to organize your tracks and for easy bussing. For this example, I have a left and right acoustic guitar that I want to make similar changes to. Instead of affecting each track separately, I can highlight these by shift clicking here, right clicking, and then creating a track stack by going here. In this track stack, I'm going to choose summing stack, which will automatically route these two to this bus. Anything I do on this bus will affect these two guitars at the same time, which can save time from copying and pasting all of the same effects from one track to another. Then, on top of that, it also makes it into a folder that makes it easy for organization and access. It's a cool way for organizing your track, and it keeps things tidy and neat. Seventh, we have some advanced quantization options. Some of these advanced options are available for audio and MIDI, which is super cool. Let's start with MIDI. If you didn't know, if you double click on a MIDI track, it will open up the editor window, and we can actually edit the MIDI from here. We're going to highlight all of these, or you could click Command A and we'll highlight all of them for you. Something I do a lot is I mess with this swing tool and I barely make it perceivable. I don't want to move things too far off the grid, but moving them slightly off the grid gives a more human feel. I also like to decrease the strength of this because I play everything by the keyboard, so this gives it a more human feel. If you're looking for a more human feel, you can once again Command A to select all of them, go to Functions, MIDI Transform, and click Humanize. Humanize will set a random integer between the 2 points that you set. If you want it to be less random or more random, you can do it here. I like to stick with sort of the defaults and just see what happens. Now, if I click Select and Operate, that means that my MIDI notes have already been changed. If I go and listen to it, now my MIDI notes are a lot more randomized than they were before. If you're drawing in your MIDI notes with a pen tool, please use some of these steps to make them feel a little bit more human, unless you're going for that robotic sound. You can also do the same thing with audio. Moving on, we have freezing tracks. I recommend doing this for any track that uses a lot of plugins or any MIDI track in general. To freeze a track in place, we can right-click on the track here, we can go to Track Header Components, and we can show freezing by clicking here. It looks like a little snowflake. Now, when we freeze, Logic will bounce this entire track as an audio file, but keep it on one track. So let's click Freeze here. We'll play it. You can see that Logic is freezing this one MIDI track, and that means we'll have all of the MIDI data that we had before, but now Logic is going to read this as audio and not as MIDI. That saves so much processing power for your computer. And if you're running into processing power problems, then freeze your tracks and I promise that you'll have some better success. As you can see, the freeze has gotten rid of all of our effects and Logic is just reading it as an audio file. But if we want to change the MIDI data, we can move these around, but then Logic will have to rebounce or refreeze the track before we can listen to it again. If we want this off, we can just click it and we're right back into MIDI. My next hidden feature of Logic is the drummer feature. And if you don't know about the drummer feature, you are definitely missing out. If you go up to Track and click New Drummer Track, you will find yourself with a new drummer track that will play to the beat of your song. Now, using these drummer tracks can make this sound really generic, but let me show you a trick that you can do to make your own custom drums using these same MIDI parameters. Once we find a beat that we like, we can add another drum kit by going into Software Instruments, Create, clicking on Electronic Drum Kit, and just choosing a preset. And this works the same for acoustic drum kits as well. And now, if we drag this drummer region down to our acoustic kit, we actually get all of the MIDI data that was used for that drum kit. And now we can edit this as we please. If we don't like this sound right here, we can delete it. If we want our snares to be a little bit higher, we can increase the velocity. Now we have our own customized MIDI data that we didn't have to do anything for because Drummer did it all for us. This is how I work, and I use Drummer a lot to make fills for me. And then after I find a fill I like, then I drag and drop it into MIDI so that I can actually customize it for the song. This is a really great way of working and will save you a lot of headache in trying to program fills and drums yourself. And talking about drums, this actually leads me into my last hidden feature for Logic, which involves creating a pattern region for your track. The pattern region is a sequencer that Logic has that makes it really easy to program drum parts. If we right-click on a drum region, we can click Create Pattern Region. You can use this for other MIDI types too, but it makes the most sense to use with drums. The sequencer works by moving through time in certain increments. In this case, I've selected each one of these squares to represent a 16th note, which means for every 4 beats, we should actually have a beat. So now, if I play this, we have a simple beat. That's how easy it is to create a beat. And if I put a hi-hat on the off beats, it might not be exactly what we're looking for the song, but it lets us create drum beats really, really fast. Whenever we're ready to get a little bit more detailed and a little bit more technical with it, we can right-click on it and click Convert to MIDI region. Now we have that same MIDI data like we did before with Drummer, but we just converted it by using the pattern sequencer rather than Drummer. Really creative and really easy ways to get some cool sounding drum patterns. And once you master this, you'll definitely be making some more complex beats. And that's a wrap. I know that was a lot of information, but go back and rewatch some parts if you need more help. And if you still need help, leave a comment below and I would love to give my professional advice to you. These 10 hidden features can revolutionize your workflow in Logic and make creating the sounds you want so much easier. If you found these tips helpful at all, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. That really helps me continue making content for you guys. Until next time, this is Maddie. As always, keep on practicing and please don't stop the music.